Okay, so we're going to try this one more time. I did it this morning, and for some reason there was no sound. So here we are again, talking about good old Kent Hovind. Yes, it's that time again to whack a theist. And so we're going to whack Kent today. He seems to not be able to understand anything that has to do with science. And so we're going to have to try and teach him the answers to his questions that he just cannot learn. Mr. Kent, I've told you multiple times, and you seem to not be able to understand that there is evidence for these things that you say there's not. So where is the scientific testable evidence for? And you have 5 questions here. So let's delve into these a little bit. I'm sure you will flat out deny any of them before I even get there. So, but I'll give it a shot anyway. So here we are. Question 1. The origin of time, space, matter, and energy. I think, as you well know already, time, space, matter, and energy are all the same thing. They are all part of the theory of relativity, and that's where the Big Bang comes from. I want to assure you, I just watched a great special this morning on the Big Bang where they said the Big Bang is not a dot of nothing. It is not a dot, okay? And it is not an explosion. This was on the Science Channel. They said it's not an explosion. It wasn't me talking, it was them talking, okay? If you want to call it the Great Expansion, that's fine with me. But it's not an explosion, okay? So this is according to David here. According to David, I believe there's a white hole wherever the beginning of the universe was. That white hole, if you look up in literature, a white hole is basically the opposite of a black hole. So instead of sucking in matter, stars, and anything gets close, a white hole is emitting energy, spitting out energy. So scientists have not seen a white hole, but there are theories about a white hole. And so I believe this theory is where the Big Bang came from. Emitting all this energy out is where space and time and matter came from. Space-time is the same thing energy. You know what energy is? The theory of relativity equates energy to matter. So once the energy is expelled, that energy is able to be converted to matter. The matter becomes our stars, planets, galaxies, and whatever else there is in the universe. That is the David Emery version. They do have testable, repeatable measurements from the microwave background, showing that everything went back to a central point. They have measurements from the expansion of the universe, from the stars and galaxies moving away from a central point. All of those are testable, repeatable, observable data, and it's two separate things. They're not two unrelated experiments that point to exactly the same thing. The same 13.8 billion year age, at the same point, they all merge there. So there is testable data that shows something happened 13.8 billion years ago. And I will admit, as scientists admit, that they don't know what caused that emission of energy. They just don't know. You and I may know that it came from God, but they don't know. But they also don't say. They don't say, we know it did this, and so you can debunk them and say, that wasn't the way it was. Okay? So that's your question number one. Question number two, how in the world did hydrogen and helium can produce 92 elements? The hydrogen started out with the emission of the energy and the conversion of energy to mass. With all that energy there was energy available for what science calls fusion. Can you write that down, Kent? Fusion. Fusion is what makes two molecules join together and become one molecule. It's called fusion. So hydrogen is one, helium is two. When you fuse that one and that two, you get three. So 3 is lithium, and it begins to fuse those elements. The energy there in any star has enough energy to fuse elements like that. When the star explodes, which you can say explode on that one, it's called a nova or a supernova, and that supernova has enough energy to fuse iron, and to fuse iron with heavier elements to create the other 92 recognized elements. So the energy's there, the explosion creates the elements. They do have testable evidence because you can check the star. Our star, the sun, is checked and you can see what elements are there. And not only that, but just recently, I think it was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, scientists were able to detect and measure strontium out loose in space, which means that strontium had to come from somewhere. Those 92 elements that you talk about. So there you go. That's number 2. So number 3, stars or planets forming. Now they have had theories about the way stars form for decades. Maybe as long as I can remember, they did. I'm sure even in caveman days when you were around, they had these theories about where stars are formed. They have stellar nurseries that are where they believe that stars were born from gas and particles, leftover mass that's in this stellar nursery, and that's where stars are formed. Just within the last 2 years, they were able to watch 2 stars being born, the birth of 2 stars. I gave you reference after reference after reference, YouTube videos that you can look up and watch yourself. It has been confirmed not only that they not only watched the stars being born, but the process that they saw was exactly what had been predicted decades ago. So here you have a scientific prediction, theories. They've got evidence up to the birth, and then all of a sudden with the James Webb Telescope, they were able to actually watch the birth of 2 stars. So I think that should answer your number 3 question. Your number 4 question, life starting from matter. They have theories about how that worked. Abiogenesis is not a theory. It's called an idea. It's not even a hypothesis yet. Abiogenesis is an idea that certain chemicals available in water were able to generate organic materials, which then were able to assimilate and create the very first life. Abiogenesis, like I said, is an idea. It is not a theory. Look it up in Google. You can find all kinds of references where they call it an idea. Again, this chemicals that form together to create life is are chemicals that they thought were available at the beginning in the primordial oceans. And in 1923, there was a scientist that did experiment putting certain chemicals in a bath of of ocean water and heating that up, and he was able to see that organic chemicals were formed in that experiment. That's a repeatable experiment. In fact, I think in 1945, that experiment was repeated exactly the same with exactly the same results. So they have come up with the organic materials that lead toward life. Now, scientists, again, like we talked about on the Big Bang, scientists do not know what was that spark that caused life to begin. They have the chemicals, they have everything there. They know the steps that RNA has created, DNA, and then on and on. I'm not a biologist, so I really can't tell you much about the biology, except to say that scientists have tested and recreated what they think leads up to the development of a ocean that is ready for life, and then all it needs is that spark. And they don't know. Maybe you and I know that it's God that provides that spark. In any case, that gives you some very good life starting from matter. So that's your answer for number 4. And then your last question in this list is any plant or animal changing to a different kind. I'm sure that your word kind is not the same as what I read when I see different kind. However, this again is something that I've talked to you about in the debates that I've had, and you just don't seem to listen. There are absolutely examples of microbes that change from single cell to multi-celled. There are examples of new species that have been created that are not able to breed with other species. And I gave you examples of that, which you seem to slough off because, a mouse is a mouse is a mouse is a mouse, even if it is a new species, and whatever else. But at some point, you're going to have to understand that speciation, evolution takes time. And for you to say, what I want to see is a cow out there giving birth to something else that's not a cow. And I'm working on a video about that I think you'll find interesting. But my thought there is that life develops somehow, and over time, these new species, these new things are developed in the in the in the animals or plants that produce a new kind. And so there has to be some kind of situation there, something that happens. And you and I must agree that even though you think, a mosquito can't turn into an elephant, and I probably agree with that, though that would be kind of hard on the mosquito, but you got to admit that when you look at baraminology, when you look at the study of kinds, you're going to have to agree that somehow those different kinds had to develop from existing kinds. So on the ark, I think you've all agreed, at least AIG, all of these other creationist sites agree that you couldn't take every species of animal on the ark. So kinds, they say, and you say, are equivalent to the family level of taxonomy. So if you want to go out and look at the family level, you're going to see a certain group of animals that have similar characteristics. However, if God only allowed two of one kind onto the ark, then that means that this cattle kind that you talk about often, this cattle kind that gets off the ark, maybe it's, a Guernsey cow and her mate, her bull, or whatever, they come off of the ark, then somehow basically in the 2,000 years from the ark to recorded history, they have to give birth to every cattle kind in the table of kinds. And so when I asked you, how does that pair of cattle give birth to a bison, and that bison gets moved over to North America where he spends his life in North America. And your only answer to me was, I don't know. So you expect me to know how the speciation occurs that created elephants? But you can't tell me how bison was birthed from a cow. And that has to be an animal that changed into a different animal kind, and he's only got 2,000 years, so he's got to get busy and get this done, so he can be part of recorded history. And so I think that's a pretty good stab at the answers to your 5 questions that you're always belly aching about. And I would certainly encourage you to take some notes and look up some stuff. Certainly not in the 1960s stuff that you looked things up in, but try something a little more modern, past 2000. And you'll find all of the answers to those questions. And so this is me, David, and I'm out.